Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Colin Davidson. I'm the president of the college, and continuing with our series where we're chatting to representatives from the four nations. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Dr. Janet Pooley, who's the Optometric Advisor to the Scottish Government. So, hello, Janet, and
Hello.
welcome.
Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to do this interview.
Yeah, it's really great to have the opportunity to have a chat. I know we've all been faced with really difficult and challenging times recently, and it's good just to compare and contrast how each of the four nations has actually dealt with what's been a challenging time. So, Janet, it might be great if you could just give us a little background as to your role and what it entails before we go any further. Would that be okay?
Oh, certainly, yes. I'm the Optometric Advisor for the Scottish Government, and my role actually is split into two. So I spend half of my time supporting the community eye care, and so that's general ophthalmic services really, and some of our other care that we're providing in the community. And then my other part of my role is in ophthalmology and supporting the hospital eye service. And we combine the two really into the National Eye Care work stream, and that combines a lot of my work. And the big part for me is working across the primary secondary care interface. And I think that's the key really to developing eye care services for the future. And I think we've been quite successful, but we've got huge plans. And so that's what makes my job really exciting. And yeah, delighted to be doing it.
It sounds fantastic. I think the link between the primary and secondary care is vital, and that's something that we've tried to get into place in England with queues to build up those greater relationships. But I think really to get things going forward, it's really important to drive that.
Yeah.
Now, Janet, I know a lot of people are aware of the way eye care services run in Scotland, but again, it might be worth just explaining a little bit about the primary eye examination and the supplementary eye examination, so that people are kind of clear on how it works.
Yeah, so we have a fully funded NHS eye care service in general ophthalmic services. So everybody in Scotland is entitled to an NHS eye examination. And we have our primary eye examination, which is it encompasses the sight test and additional tests as well. And then we have the supplementary eye examination, which allows us to recall patients and review patients, to treat patients, and really to look after them within the community. We have a variety of supplementary codes that we can claim under, and it allows us to provide a huge range of care within the community. Now that's provided as a package of care. So every optometrist provides that service.
It's really fantastic, and a lot of people in England are envious of that kind of setup. And I think the other thing that people in England are again a little bit envious of is the way that IP has been supported in Scotland. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about that as well.
Well, I mean, that goes back quite a way, because I used to work, well, I still do actually, my contract, I'm seconded to the Scottish Government, so my contract's still held with NHS Education for Scotland. And when I started there in 2009, one of the big aims right at the beginning there was to start to train independent prescribers in Scotland. And so it's been a long time. 2009, that was when we started to fund practitioners to upskill. And I mean, it's been tremendous. And what I imagined when we first started funding it was that we would have this group of practitioners who were really keen to get involved, and then it would drop off. I had not imagined that so many practitioners wanted to become independent prescribers, and it has been tremendous to see. And it is really exciting when so many practitioners want to become independent prescribers. Fantastic. And I mean, to see the level of care that independent prescribers can give and to support patients, it's wonderful. And that for us is going to continue. We're very keen to train a lot more of our practitioners to become prescribers. So, yeah.
I think it's fantastic that there's still that demand and that swell of interest in it, and I think it's something that we're starting to see a little bit more in England, and it'd be really great if we can sort of try and encourage that more. But I suppose
to the stage, can I just jump in? But I think we've got to the stage where our practitioners are just, that's the rite of passage, that's what they do. They become qualified, and then they go on to become independent prescribers, and that's just what you do when you work in Scotland. So
yeah, I think, you know, if it's something that we could have that's an expected sort of path in your career, that'd be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? Yeah. And I think just chatting about independent prescribers, that would maybe bring us on nicely as to maybe how optometry in Scotland has coped with the pandemic, and how you've structured things to deal with the way things have suddenly changed.
Yeah, I mean, it was only March, wasn't it, that we started reducing our services, and it seems, I mean, I'm doing this interview beginning of July, and it seems such a long time ago. And I never ever imagined that I'd be in a position to, pull services. Just seems quite unbelievable now. But anyway, so 13th of March was when we first pulled, and we first announced that we were pulling our domiciliary services, and then 23rd of March. We stopped our routine eye care, and wow, it's taken a while. I mean, it took, at the first, as you can imagine, we were working incredibly hard, and how could we manage and support patients, and what could we do for the service? How could we provide that eye care? And very quickly we moved to a point where we had just a few practices open. So we worked on the principle of one centre, one premises providing eye care per 100,000 population. So we were working on just over 50, I think it was 52, 53 practices or sites that were providing eye care to patients in Scotland. And that was face-to-face care. And other practitioners were providing remote services. They were triaging patients and providing remote consultations. And so we moved to that fairly quickly, completely transforming the way care was provided. So some of that care was being provided in optometric practices, and some of it was being provided in some of our teach and treat clinics, and some of the services did remain within the hospital eye service. So different models across the country. But the key to the success with that was our independent prescribers, and they were the ones who really supported the service. We allowed intra-referrals, which we hadn't previously done. So that was allowing our community optoms without that qualification to refer to an independent prescriber. And so that, if that patient required any sort of additional care, then that could be provided. Tremendous, actually. And I was bowled over by how impressive our optometrists have been. It's been incredible to change the way the care is provided, that remote consultations, just a few practitioners then working in the emergency eye care treatment centres around the country, providing that care behind PPE, and outstanding. The feedback's been really, really encouraging. And I think those practitioners who did step up and work within the treatment centres found it incredibly rewarding. And they were working with colleagues who they probably wouldn't normally work with. And so I think that, combined support, that peer support, has really helped them develop and provide that outstanding care that we've been able to support our patients with. So, and then we also utilise some teleophthalmology in some of our practices. So, the treatment centres, some of them were connected to the hospitals by teleophthalmology. So that was slit lamps with tablets on the back, or slit lamps with cameras that connected to the hospital, so that you could get the opinion from an ophthalmologist if that patient, instead of being seen in the treatment centre, was then required to be seen in the hospital. So very much trying to keep patients in the community where we possibly could.
It sounds like it's been a challenge to get it all set up and running, but it's fantastic to hear just how the optometrists have stepped up and really upped the game and helped with getting patients seen in the right place at the right time, and keeping them out of potentially tricky situations. I think that there's been challenges, and I think you maybe alluded to some of those, such as access to PPE and getting the telemedicine all set up. How have you managed with all of that? Has that been easy or difficult?
So the initial drop of PPE to our eye care treatment centres. So we had support from our dental colleagues there, and so all our PPE actually has been provided by the NHS for practitioners. It's an NHS service. Our optometrists are part of one of the 4 primary care contractor groups, and we provide the PPE for them to support them. So this initial drop emergency eye care treatment centres was provided by our dental colleagues, and then we have a national distribution centre. Now we're back up and running with all our practices open. We've been able to provide PP for all the practices. So yeah,
fantastic. And
teleophthalmology, that's been a big thing, hasn't it? Yes. So we have some software, Attend Anywhere Near Me software, which we had started to roll out actually in optometry, but also in general practice, and some of our practice nurses had been using it, community nursing as well, but not to the extent that Scotland has now run with remote consultation, just like other parts of the UK, of course. And so this software has been rolled out and is continuing to be rolled out, because remote consultations will be a big part of care as we move forward in the pandemic. So getting that up and running tricky, but we've done it where we can. Yeah.
So I think at the minute we're now moving into the amber phase, and I know that Nicola Sturgeon has been a little bit more reluctant to open things up as quickly as Boris Johnson. So in terms of the practices in Scotland, how have you reopened services, and what are the kind of things that practices are able to offer at the moment?
So practices opened on 29th of June. So they've been open now. This is the first week of opening. And we've been really cautious about opening things up in Scotland. We've been very careful and taking things very, very slowly, cautiously. And it's good to see that the figures and the number of cases and thankfully the number of deaths are coming down. So that's really encouraging, and hopefully it will allow us to move forward and to start opening more things up. So it was hard not being able to give dates. As a government, we've been very careful about not trying to raise expectations. We produced a route plan quite a long time ago. In fact, I think probably earlier than the other nations. And so patients and the population had an idea of when things would open, but no particular dates. They knew there was a plan, but we hadn't released dates, and we were very clear that when things were safe to do so, we would do that. And so we have gone along that route. I mean, one of the issues that we did identify was that once you knew that practices would open, we were very nervous that patients would think, well, it's only a couple more weeks, I'll just hold back and wait. And so we did quite a big campaign to try and encourage, if you've got a problem with your eyes, you need to contact somebody now, you can't wait. That was the only issue I suppose we did feel we had with that route plan. But apart from that, we have a way forward. We've planned it out, and apart from the dates, then we've gone along that track. So opening things very, very carefully. So at the moment, we are only providing an emergency and essential care in practices. Very cautious. Practitioners are not used to using PPE in the main, and so that's a big step. And it's a big thing for optometry, isn't it? We've not done that before. We were never taught to do that. We never imagined that we would be using PPE. The population didn't, of course. So big steps. So for practitioners, and I've been speaking to a variety of practitioners this week. I mean, I spoke to a lot when we were doing the emergency eye care treatment centres, but certainly spoken to a few more who've just opened up, and this is their first few days, and very different for them. Very, very challenging, really. And I think they're all keen to get back. I think that was the interesting thing. They'd had quite a break from, just doing remote consultations is quite tricky, isn't it? So actually getting back and seeing people, I think people have been glad to do that and actually get going. So It'd be interesting to see the data come through once we've been open a bit longer and seeing what care is being provided. So, but still very cautious about patients we're seeing. So you're
not seeing routine patients at the minute. It's just the emergency and essential.
Absolutely, this pandemic hasn't gone away. COVID-19 is still a big challenge for us, and we're really, we want to make sure that we can manage things, and so slow and cautious. That's how we're progressing. So
yeah, I think everyone's agreed that it's around for a while, and there are going to be challenges ahead. What sort of maybe opportunities could we see ahead that might be beneficial for optometry and for our patients?
The big thing, certainly very early on in the pandemic, was the great working relationships that developed between community optometry and our secondary care ophthalmology colleagues. It was tremendous to see. And I mean, those relationships, of course they exist, but not probably to the extent they have now, the stage they've now got to, I think. And it was, I mean, we got huge amounts of benefits from ophthalmology at the beginning when we were setting up our emergency eye care treatment centres. And I think the ophthalmologists have been incredibly impressed with what optometry has delivered during this pandemic. That community care has been outstanding. We had to keep patients in the community. We didn't want them going in near our hospitals if we possibly could. And actually, optometry was able to achieve that in the main. And only those who absolutely needed to be seen in ophthalmology actually, were referred over. Tremendous. And actually we got an awful lot of positive feedback from ophthalmology about that, and hopefully that will be something that's lasting, that respect and that joint working, because that's only going to benefit patient care, isn't it? So that's how we need to work in the future. We need to do much more of that, because we can do that. Optometry can provide that sort of level of care very easily.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's just fantastic that our ophthalmology colleagues are realizing just the kind of things that optometrist skill sets enable them to do, and it's great for optometry, and then I say great for our patients as well. Just as a final thought, Janet, just any kind of lessons that we can learn from this, do you think, that would help us to be stronger in the future?
I still feel very much, I mean, we're still very much in the pandemic. I'm not sure that I fully, we have a plan of how we want to develop eye care services in Scotland. Independent prescribing was key to that. And I think probably the pandemic has just been a way of supporting that as a notion, because that's been so helpful. We've been able to provide so much care to patients because so many of optometrists are independent prescribers. So, it's not just about prescribing. This is, independent prescribing is about managing patients and looking after patients, and that whole care that can be provided in the community, and so patients don't need to go into hospital. And with the future, the demographic changes, that the way our services are being provided, we are going to have to manage more patients in the community. We're going to have more seamless care across primary and secondary care, and so independent prescribing is going to be really key to supporting patients. So I guess that was a big thing. Teleophthalmology, we'd like to roll that out a lot better. We need much better connections between our community services and ophthalmology. And I think the big thing, those remote consultations, and when we didn't ever allow that as part of general ophthalmic services, and we had chatted about that around referring patients for cataract surgery, and whether you could talk to a patient about that and then phone them up afterwards and check whether they were happy to be referred before you actually made the referral. And we've been talking about that, but actually that really it's worked so well, that remote consultation. Practitioners have done that really well. I think we've all been surprised about how well that's worked. So yeah.
I think practitioners have embraced the change in practice and adapted to it incredibly well. And I think remote consultations, they are incredibly difficult. They're a skill set in themselves, but I think the way that the practitioners have developed that skill set has been fantastic. But yeah, I think we've all got challenges going forward, haven't we? But I think to carry on building on those relationships that we've developed with ophthalmology, I think that's key. I think the connectivity between primary and secondary care is again something that I think hopefully we'll be able to build upon as well. And in England, hopefully we can maybe go along the route of funding that enables us to provide the kind of services that you're able to do in Scotland. So, Janet, thanks very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know you're incredibly busy, and it's been great to chat. And hopefully we can carry on these sort of chats in future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Colin. It's been a pleasure. It's really lovely to talk to you.
Thanks very much. Bye bye.